Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly powerful piece of literature that somehow manages to capture a massive, world-shifting conflict in just a handful of pages. We're going to look at how a simple disagreement over a stretch of dirt ignites into a devastating clash of worlds and becomes a pretty profound lesson in cultural empathy. So, as we dive into Chinua Achebe's classic short story, Dead Men's Path, we really need to ask a critical question. Think about this. What actually happens when the unstoppable force of what someone calls progress slams right into the unmovable roots of tradition? It's a question that resonates just as much today as it did when the story was first written. Section 1. The Zealous New Headmaster. January 1949, Doom Central School. The mission authorities have decided to shake things up at this historically unprogressive school, so they appoint Michael Obi to take charge. Official records designate this 26-year-old as a pivotal teacher. He's young, he's full of energy, and he is completely driven by a passion for modern methods. But, with all that youthful drive comes a pretty heavy dose of arrogance. He is outspoken and entirely dismissive of older, less educated teachers. He just condemns them as narrow-minded and outdated, basically seeing himself as the ultimate agent of change. What's really fascinating here is the physical vision Obi has for this space. He's got two primary aims: to fix this quote-unquote backward school, enforce a really high standard of teaching, and turn the school compound into a place of modern beauty. And his young wife, Nancy, she is totally on board. She dreams of being the queen of the school. Together, they plant these beautiful, vibrant red and yellow hibiscus and alamanda hedges. Their ultimate goal is to physically and visually wall off their bright, modern school from the surrounding rank bushes of the village. Section 2. The Ancestral Footpath. An Unexpected Discovery. The conflict sparks one evening when Obi is standing outside, proudly admiring his carefully tended work. Suddenly, he is absolutely scandalized. He sees an old village woman hobbling right across his pristine compound, stepping right through his marigold flower bed. Upon investigating, Obi discovers this faint, almost completely overgrown dirt path cutting directly through his school premises. Another teacher explains to him that this path connects the village shrine with their place of burial. But listen, Obi doesn't care about the village's geography. To him, this isn't just a path. This is a scandalous breach of school regulations. Obi's immediate reaction is pure panic, driven by fear of authority. He is terrified that a government education officer might see this path during an upcoming inspection next week. He even complains that villagers might use his schoolroom for a pagan ritual. So he takes incredibly aggressive physical steps to block it completely. First, he plants heavy sticks across the path where it enters and leaves the premises. And then, just to make sure his message is loud and clear, he strengthens the barrier with barbed wire. Section 3. A Clash of Worldviews. The priest meets the headmaster. Just 3 days after that barbed wire goes up, the old village priest of Ani pays a visit to the headmaster to seek a diplomatic resolution. He's an old man who walks with a slight stoop, carrying a stout walking stick that he taps on the floor to make his points. And this sit-down brilliantly illustrates the core friction of the whole story. You've got two completely incompatible worldviews face to face. There's Michael Obi's remarkably rigid, bureaucratic view completely focused on eradicating old beliefs and enforcing rules. And across from him, the priest's deeply rooted pragmatic view focused on honoring the practices of their ancestors and keeping their spiritual path open. The priest really tries to explain the profound, literal life and death significance of this path. Tapping his stick, he tells Obi, "Our dead relatives depart by it and our ancestors visit us by it. But most important, it is the path of children coming in to be born." So for the village, we're not talking about a convenient shortcut through a garden. This is the spiritual artery of their entire community. And Obi's reaction to this deeply held belief, it's honestly kind of jaw-dropping. He just listens with this satisfied smile and gives a shockingly condescending reply. He openly mocks the priest. He says, "Dead men do not require footpaths." He flat out tells the old man that the entire purpose of the school is to teach the village children to laugh at these very ideas. He refuses even the smallest compromise, sarcastically suggesting the ancestors can just take a little detour around the premises. Section 4. The Tragic Climax. The Consequences of Hubris. The crucial point here is that Obi's absolute arrogance and his blunt refusal to listen triggers an immediate, devastating chain reaction. Look at how fast this escalates. The priest realizes Obi won't listen, and he leaves peacefully, simply saying, "I have no more words to say." But just 2 days later, a young village woman died in childbirth. Remember what the priest said about the path of children coming to be born? A diviner is consulted and prescribes heavy sacrifices to appease the ancestors who were insulted by the offense. The very next morning, Obi wakes up to absolute ruin. His beautiful hedges are torn up, his flowers are trampled to death, and one of the school buildings is entirely pulled down. Talk about the ultimate irony. That exact same day, the white supervisor arrives for the very inspection Obi was so desperately trying to prepare for when he built the fence in the first place. But instead of praising Obi's modern methods, the supervisor writes an incredibly nasty report about the ruined premises. He officially documents the tribal war situation and blames it squarely on the misguided zeal of the new headmaster. Section 5. Tradition versus Modernity. Deconstructing the themes. Having witnessed Obi's incredibly rapid downfall, let's step back and unpack the deeper themes Achebe is weaving through this text. He brilliantly uses the physical landscape to represent ideological warfare. On one side, we have the footpath. It's this powerful metaphor for the invisible but deeply felt lifeline of village culture, history, and spirituality. On the other side, we have Obi's barbed wire fence, a stark, literal metaphor for the blunt, unyielding, and frequently violent force of forced modernization and colonial education policies. The greatest tragedy of all this? The conflict was entirely avoidable. The priest actually offered a profound philosophy of balance. He quoted an Igbo proverb to Obi, "Let the hawk perch and let the eagle perch." He was advocating for peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. He was basically signaling that the modern school and the ancient village could totally share the same space, if they just acknowledged each other's right to exist. Section 6. The irony of progress. The cost of arrogance. But because Obi totally lacked this wisdom and lacked any real respect for the people he was supposed to be educating, his attempt at progress actually drove everything backward into chaos. We really see the true cost of his arrogance here. He aimed to bring light to what he thought was a dark place, but instead he sparked a tribal conflict. He rigidly enforced his school rules, but completely ignored the human context of the community. In the end, his precious modern methods physically destroyed the very school he sought to elevate. Achebe is showing us, plain as day, that education and progress, when stripped of cultural empathy, simply become tools of destruction. Which brings us to our conclusion. If true progress requires building for the future, can it ever succeed by building barbed wire walls against the past? I want to leave you with that final provocative thought. How often do we still see misguided zeal, ignoring the deep roots of the communities it tries to change? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep thinking critically, and I'll catch you next time.